It's time for the 1430 Connection on 1430 WNAV and 99.9 FM, spotlighting news, newsmakers, and important community issues. Now, with this week's edition of the 1430 Connection, here is WNAV news anchor Donna Cole.
Welcome to the 1430 Connection. I'm Donna Cole. In the studio with me today is a very special guest who came all the way to Annapolis from France. It's Minter Dial. Welcome, Minter.
Thank you, Donna.
Let's start with who Minter is. Let's start. Who are you, and why are you here in this country?
Love the question. Well, so I'm a 52-year-old living in Paris and London, and I have had a very circuitous life in career, where I graduate with a literature degree from Yale, and then I work in an investment bank, and then I buy a company based in Washington, D.C., which is a travel agency for musicians, completely unrelated, which goes bankrupt. Then I write an unpublished novel. I work at the Philadelphia Zoo, aquarium. I teach tennis. And
you get bored easily, don't you?
That's the one. Yeah, what next? And then anyway, I go to business school. Then I work for L'Oreal for 16 years. And not that what you do defines who you are, but that's sort of my international thing. I've changed countries 15 times, Donna. Married to a beautiful French-Spanish woman, 2 children, and I continue to think that life is a journey.
Very good. Okay, so we have known each other for quite a few years over the internet and over the telephone. I interviewed you several years ago. It's an incredibly interesting story that you have that goes back to your grandfather.
Yes.
And it's a journey that spans several continents and decades. Yep. And it starts right here in where?
In Washington, D.C.
And Annapolis as well, right?
Of course, at Annapolis. I mean, let's say his story starts in Annapolis.
Okay, so your grandfather had the same name as you. He was Lieutenant Minter Dial.
That's right.
Tell me who Lieutenant Minter Dial was.
So Minter Dial is a South Carolinian. He's brought up in Lawrence, South Carolina. And then his father, in 1919, wins the Senate for a position for South Carolina. And they moved to Washington, D.C. in 1919. It's a one-term senator. And at that time, he goes to high school in Washington and then graduates and chooses the academy for his career, and then graduates in 1932, gets married to my grandmother in California, and becomes a Navy officer. And then in 1941 goes out to war. So he's a man who was really of the finest Southern tradition, which I've discovered, which of course I didn't know much about personally before, but he was a very much a Southern gentleman who marries this dashing woman from California who's an actress, and lives a very honorable and fine life.
Graduates Annapolis, gets married, goes into war.
Second World War. So in 1941, of course, the war was already raging in Europe, and he's now a lieutenant in the U.S. Navy, and he's being moved around from parts as they were in any naval career like this. Anyway, in July of 1941, he gets shipped out to Manila. So he's stationed there. The war hasn't been declared, and then in December 8th, when you cross the date line, the war is declared in Manila, and he's on action stations. At that time, he's captain of the USS Napa, which is a tugboat, and albeit a very rickety World War I boat. And then he gets plunged into war for the next 5 months. They're fighting the Japanese.
Let's talk about something, though, important to this whole story. Yeah. The center of this story, right, other than your grandfather, was something your grandfather had that was given to him or that he purchased while he was in Annapolis.
Totally. So he left Annapolis in 1932. And so it's 4 years you come out. And at the end of every graduation cross, they actually create a specific ring. So every year, Annapolis, like all universities, had these signet rings. So the 1932 ring for the Naval Academy was a very specific type of decor. My grandfather purchased it from Beatty Banks and Biddle, and then he carries with him. And what I've discovered, of course, is that these rings carry so much importance for them. It becomes the last object that they will let go of when they have nothing else left. And so he takes that with him, and of course, the tragedy, of course, after the 5 months of fighting, he's taken prisoner.
What does the ring look like?
All right, so it's a gold ring that it looks like a signet ring, but if you on the side it has 32, and the stone that he commissioned from Baileybanks and Biddle was a blue stone. So it's semi-precious.
Okay.
And afterwards, the little insignias have all little details that make it specific to the 1932 ring.
On that note, we're going to take a short break. We're going to come back and find out more about Lieutenant Minter Dial's journey into the Pacific, into war, and this ring. I'm Donna Cole. This is the 1430 Connection. We will be right back. Welcome back to the 1430 Connection. I'm Donna Cole. In the studio with me is Minter Dial, all the way from France. We're talking about a journey that spans several continents, several decades. It starts in Washington, D.C., in Annapolis also, and a ring. And Minter Dial's grandfather was Lieutenant Minter Dial. So now we have him leaving the Naval Academy with a ring, gets married, goes off to fight in the Pacific.
Yep, in the Philippines.
In the Philippines. He gets captured. Tell me about that.
So he is, first of all, he was the captain of the tugboat, and then afterwards because at the very beginning, the Japanese come in with their airplanes, and because of an amazing, unfortunate series of coincidences, the American airplanes are on the ground when the Japanese planes come in, and they destroy basically half of the American airplanes. So now you have a naval force without any air cover. So it's just a question of time.
And a lot of ships also in ruin and burning.
Oh, of course, as well. And so the Japanese, they have a large land force, and then they come in and they take Bataan, which is a peninsula in the west of the Philippines. That takes 5 months. And then everything is owned by the Japanese but this little island called Corregidor. And Corregidor is in the middle of Manila Bay. And so my grandfather's stationed there with 12,500 men because his boat had to be scuttled. They didn't have any more gas for the boats, for the ships. And he's stuck on the Corregidor Island. The Japanese, for 1 month, pound the heck out of it from all quarters, including airplanes, including, from the ships and all. And it took them 1 month to get this little island, this little tadpole of an island.
Right.
May 6, 1942, they're all taken prisoner.
Unbelievable. And your grandfather is taken where?
So then, at that time, he has pneumonia already. Of course, they've been on half rations for a very long time. Everyone's in very poor conditions. The 12,500 men from Corregidor do not do the Bataan Death March, I hasten to add, because oftentimes everyone sort of says, well, they were part of that. No. But they had another very nasty journey. They'd get put on a train and go about 100 miles, and they're stuffed into these cabins. No room to sit down, only standing up. So you have all these sweaty men that have been in terrible conditions, that are absolutely starving already. No water, no rice, and they get shipped up to this prison camp called Cabanatuan. And that's where he stays basically for the next 2.5 years.
And somewhere along the line, what goes on with this ring that he left Annapolis
So
with?
he's keeping it. So the thing was that in these prison camps, a ring would be worth a bowl of rice at times, and if you needed quinine because you had malaria or whatever. But he kept it with him the whole time.
Which is unbelievable.
It's already a sign of commitment.
Right.
And then afterwards, the prisoners are brought back to Manila. The Americans are now pressing. The American forces are now coming back. As MacArthur said, he would return. So does he. And with all the American forces, they come back. We're now December 1944, and my grandfather's put on a ship called Oriokumaru. It's called a hell ship. And there's 1,619 men on the ship.
Which the Americans do not know who is who on these ships.
Absolutely. These are unmarked Japanese ships. The Japanese would rather not indicate whether they're troops or prisoners so that they would confound the American air forces and submarines that were coming along. So he's put on this ship with 1,619 other men, and it gets bombed by the Americans further up. So they don't even know that they're killing their own men. 300 men are killed. They're put on a tennis court. My grandfather's still alive, 1,300 men, he still has the ring. And then he gets put on another ship, which is called the Norimuru, and that goes all the way to Taiwan. And in Taiwan, they're stationed, they're kept on the boat in the most ignominious conditions. They're in the bay, there's no air, there's no water, there's no sanitation. They have no light, of course, and they're stuffed in. They have nobody lie down, and they do that for 9 days while they're partying. By the way, doing New Year's Eve, and then go they on the 9th of January, planes off the USS Hornet find these boats stored, anchored in bay, attack them. 300 men are killed, including my grandfather. But just as he's about to die, he's held by one of his best friends they've been very supportive through 2 years, a guy called Doug Fisher. And he's in his arms and he says, "Hey, Doug, listen, I'm going to die. If you survive, promise me you go find my wife, tell her that I loved her, and give her this ring." So this is the irony, is that this guy survives the war. There are only 271 men of the 1,619 that survive. He survives, and it's a very treacherous journey that continues on. 50 men are dying every day. He comes back to California without the ring because he lost it in the chaos. But he does see my grandmother in 1946. "Hey, listen, I was with your husband when he died. I told him I would tell you that the last things on his lips was that he loved you. He also gave me a ring that I couldn't bring back because I lost it. I'm so sorry." And in lieu of giving the ring, he takes off his wristwatch and he gives it to my father, 7-year-old at the time. So listen, I wish I could bring the ring, but here's my watch.
Unbelievable. I mean, so much drama, so much tragedy, so much. Okay, so where does the ring come back? The ring does come back.
It does. So that's the crazy thing. So that was 1946. The guy goes away. Doug Fisher goes away. And then we have to wait 17 more years. It's May of 1962, and a Korean chap is digging in the ground. He's excavating.
Where?
In Incheon, which is just north of Seoul, capital of South Korea. And he finds some gold in the form of a ring, which he, like, "Oh, that's cool. I'll steal that from the excavation site." He shows it to his pal. "Hey, look what I got. Make a distraction so they don't search me." So they make a distraction. He gets out of the compound, and he goes to burn it down. The other guy to whom he'd shown it happens to have a second job, and his second job is as a chauffeur, and the chauffeur of none other than an admiral of the United States Navy.
Who knew?
Well, yeah, not yet.
Yeah.
Wait. So he says, "Well, sir, today I was with another friend of mine, and he found a ring that looks just like yours, sir." "What do you mean like mine?" "Well, this big signet ring with a stone." He didn't know it was an Annapolis ring, and but the admiral sniffed that it could be, jumps in the Jeep, and they drive around, and they find the other guy. The Incheon has 350,000 people. This is not
It's
a small...
extraordinary. Yeah.
They find him. "Where's the ring?" "I've already burnt it down." "What do you mean you burned it down?" "Well, I sold it over there in that shop." So they jump in the Jeep. They go to the shop. They come in. The admiral says, "Where's the ring?" "It's in the fire." "I don't care. Pull it out." Gets the ring out, puts it in the water to cool it. And then the admiral picks it up, reads inside, dial 32. And that's when he says, "Oh my God, my best friend's ring." This admiral and my grandfather had gone to the Naval Academy, had played on the same line of lacrosse for 3 years, and were best friends. He was George Washington Pressey is his name, and he was my grandfather's usher in his wedding. His wife was my grandmother's maid of honor. We can't say good friends, we have to say best friends.
Fate.
Crazy.
Was meant to come back.
Yeah.
We're going to take another short break. This is the 1430 Connection. I'm Donna Cole. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the 1430 Connection. I'm Donna Cole. In the studio with me today is Minter Dial. We're hearing the story of his grandfather's ring. His grandfather left Annapolis, the Naval Academy, with a ring, goes out to the war, has this horrific story. Is prisoner of war. Is getting ready to be liberated. The Americans hit the ship. Long story short, ring is lost. Ring is then found under miraculous circumstances. Ring goes back to where, Minter?
So, Pressey, this is the admiral. He's in Incheon. He has the ring. He comes back home and he says, "Listen, guys, this is a signal for me. It's a beautiful thing. I remember my friend Minter Dial, Lieutenant, would have a son who was Navy age. So my father was in the Navy for 2 years of his life, 1959 to 1961. Pressey then finds in the Navy records that the existence of a guy called Nathaniel Victor Dial. That must be him, because my friend's called Nathaniel Minter Dial.
Right.
So connects back with it, finds that he's in Haddonfield, New Jersey, about to meet my mom, who is from Philadelphia. And so he sends the ring to him in Haddonfield. Then my father then is given the duty, of course, to go deliver the ring to his mom in New York at the time. And she dies months after that. The ring comes back to him. He is put in place by his stepfather, goes to Brussels, where I'm born, 1964. They moved to Paris in 1967, and no sooner had they moved in, they're doing some decorations and so on. They have a lovely dinner party. They go upstairs, and that night, while they're sleeping upstairs, someone obviously came in. They didn't take much, but they took the ring.
What year was that?
1967.
When did you start searching for it?
So I began my journey that's why I said at the very beginning, it's sort of, I started Washington in 1991. And this is where it's crazy. Like, a woman calls and says, hey, can I speak to Minter Dial? I said, well, yes, I just bought this travel agency. And she said, well, you sound very young. Well, I'm not very young. I'm 26 years old. And he says, no, but I want to invite you to your 65th school reunion. Oh, that would be a little older than I am then. And so she's looking for my grandfather. Right. To invite him to his high school reunion 65 years later. And so that's how I started my journey. And I ended up meeting 8 of his classmates who are still alive. And they started telling me the story. And I was like, oh my gosh, I was named after a guy who is class. And not that I didn't think that before. I mean, at least I didn't have any negative thoughts, but
a guy with a story, an extraordinary story.
That's it.
So you've been searching for the ring for how many years?
Let's say I don't want to exaggerate, because at the beginning I didn't know what I was doing. When I started, I just sort of worked into the story, because at the beginning I didn't know I was going to get on this journey. I mean, if I'd known, gosh, would I have done it? Because it's been such an expansive. It's never, wherever there's a spot, I go for it. So at the beginning, I just sort of said, well, these guys are alive. I must capture the information. Then I said, I better do the same thing for the Annapolis grads that were the same age, because they're in their 80s and 90s, and they don't live much longer, especially the ones that fought in the Second World War, especially the ones that were prisoners of war. Their survival rate is distinctly less than the veterans of the World War II in Europe. And anyway, so I ended up collecting all this information, and then as I get into it, I discovered the nature of the ring story, because I didn't find it out right away. I was, piecing this stuff. There's a lot more to it.
You wanted to learn about the whole history.
That's it. And he lives 33 years. That's it. And finally I get the ring story. I'm like, oh my gosh, we got to find the ring. It was stolen in France. And there's another amazing anecdote, which is that so I don't really know the story, but my father kept everything to himself, at least for the first 10 years of my research. And then in 1979, my father gets in touch with a French journalist, and he coordinates a rendezvous with the president of France, Giscard d'Estaing, and explains the story to him. And Giscard d'Estaing, so president of France, says, this is a scandal, in a French accent, huh? So this is a scandal, that the ring of such value was stolen in France. We must find the ring.
We must find the ring.
Right. However, he loses the elections, 1981. Then another man who's a competitor of my father's was assassinated. And the whole idea of being public about trying to find a personal story for the ring collapsed. And the idea of the media story in honor of the Franco-American relationships disappeared. And there, with that, was lost thought about trying to find the ring again.
So it dies down for a while.
That's it.
Then it's reborn. And by the way, when it's reborn, this is before the internet, too. Searching for things was impossible.
It was all needle in a haystack.
So the internet comes out. You start getting some help from the
people
world.
Like you.
As they start to hear about it, people start publicizing. The Naval Academy, the Alumni Foundation starts getting involved.
Absolutely. A wonderful woman called Timothy Woodbury at the Annapolis Academy who helps finding rings. And I get this ecosystem. And actually, what's lovely about the story is that, of course, it's my story and my grandfather, but it resonates with other people. And that's what I want to do, and especially in today's world.
Everybody wants to find the ring for you, absolutely.
Yeah, but let's focus on something that's meaningful. And that's sort of what I want to do. I hope we can congregate and elevate the debate a little bit.
So you're here now in America, and you're promoting.
Yes, and I'm promoting.
Not just finding the ring, but now there is a book.
Yes, there is a book.
There's a MPT special.
Yep.
And there's a movie that just won.
Yes, I wish I'd love to see an Oscar. It won the best foreign film at the Charleston International Film Festival.
Congratulations.
It's been in 3 film festivals so far, and right now it's in the Ojai Film Festival. It's showing on the 11th of November at Ojai in LA, and it'll be shown also on MPT in the Maryland area
tonight.
That's at 9 o'clock.
Okay.
And then it'll also be shown on another PBS, as well as on the History Channel in Australia and New Zealand tonight, and which is rather exciting.
It's Veterans Day.
It is, and all around the world, Armistice Day, and so it's an important day in military history, and I'm really thrilled to be part of it.
The book, where can people find it? So
the book, The Lost Ring Home, same name as the film, will be available on all fine e-retailers like Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and IndieBound, and Books A Million, and some other bookstores like the Annapolis bookstore.
Yeah, you're doing a book signing too, right?
I am, on the 17th.
Very good. And in addition, where can people find out more information about you, about the search, about, you have a website?
I do, and I even have a reward for the ring, a $10,000 reward on the site, which is called thelostringhome.com.
Minter, thank you so much for being here today. It was truly a pleasure.
It's my pleasure, Donna, and I send a message out to all people who are in the service or in the ecosystem around the service. Thanks for your duty.
Thanks again. This is Donna Cole. This has been the 1430 Connection. We will see you next week.